Hololive players. Yesterday, I went to my local venue's first official hololive official card game tournament, and I'm happy to say I came back undefeated, 3-0. Very happy about my performance and how this deck in particular performed. I teased the other day on my community post that I went undefeated with a deck that was not Mume Promise or Kanata, so I'm going to share my deck list with you all today and talk about how it performed, why it worked, and how I think it's going to perform going into the next set. Funny enough, since it just took my venue so long to work things out with Bushiroad, this tournament is also the last tournament of the Blooming Radiance expansion, so I will be going immediately into Quintet Spectrum starting after this video, starting to prepare for next week's tournament, which is the Halloween edition tournament, where you can win an exclusive Mori Calliope Halloween card. If you want to learn more about that, I'll link to that video as well, which I covered a little while back. But with that said, let's get into this deck list. So first things first, let's start with the Oshi card I went with. Pekora. So this card I think is quite good. It's not something you see terribly often, but it works really well with green cheer decks. In my current build of the deck that I'm doing, as you saw by the thumbnail, it is a mono AZKi deck, so I'll get more to that in a moment. But AZKi works really, really well with Pekora. I feel that this card is much stronger with AZKi than the actual AZKi Oshi, and I'll explain why. So, Pekora, you don't actually end up using her special Oshi skill, which is kind of funny. You never use it. There's maybe one scenario where you could actually benefit from it. Honestly, if you're using it that way, at that point, you're probably already losing and are just going to lose. So really, you only use this for her regular Oshi skill, which is the Little Wild Rabbits. So the way this one works is once per turn for the cost of 2 holo power. If your holomem is down during the opponent's turn, reattach all green cheers from one of your downed holomem, divided as you choose to your other holomems. So this is extremely valuable because in the AZKi deck, you're going to start getting cheer acceleration, and if you were to get downed, you basically preserve all of the cheer that you've built up until that point, and you could set up another holomem for success. So imagine having your second bloom out, gets knocked out, and you have 4 cheer attached to it. You just say, okay, I'll use my holo power. And it's only a 2 cost holo power, which is pretty easy to build up. And then you get to keep all that cheer, and you can just attach it to another second bloom and have the same thing ready to go. Or you can build up other cards on the board. So it's really powerful, and it's a great way to keep your deck consistent. I think this is the way to go if you're going to play an AZKi deck. Definitely prefer this over the regular Oshi. So of course, since this is all about green cheer, no surprise that my cheer deck consists entirely of green cheer. So you're just going to be running 20 green cheer. Nothing shocking there. So with those things said, let's put these over here for now. Beautiful. And we'll get to the actual card list. Let's start with the second bloom AZKi. So this AZKi has 220 HP, which is incredibly tanky. It can take a lot of hits, and it's really hard to knock out in one turn. You have to really have your cards aligned if you want to knock her out in one turn, otherwise it's going to take 2 at least. Her ability is on bloom, she heals 40 damage, which, not bad. But the secondary effect is if you roll dice and it is odd, you get to attach any number of cheer from your archive to that holomem. Now with Pekora, you're not going to end up actually having a lot of cheer in your archive, so honestly, the bloom effect isn't super relevant. It does come in handy in a pinch when you don't have the means to keep all of your cheer. So it's still useful, but not something you're going to be as heavily relying on in this build because of the Pekora card. And what's really good about this card, besides just being tanky, besides the fact that it heals itself, and besides the fact that it can add cheer from your archive, is that its base attack is 120, but against white, it does plus 50. So if you're going against one of the top decks, both of the top decks in this format are white cheer. You have Mume Promise and Kanata. So you're going to be doing 170 damage to their holomem, which is incredibly strong. It is almost enough to knock out a second bloom Mume or second bloom Iris. Second bloom Mume being 190 HP and Iris being 200 HP. And second bloom Kanata is 200 HP. So you're doing 170, and it's not really hard to find that extra 20 or 30 damage that you need. You can collab with another one of your AZKi cards to do another attack, She has plenty of first blooms that do like 30, 50 damage. So it's not hard to find that result. So I just think this card is really slept on in this format. White Sheer is so threatening, and she just has so many answers to it. Not only that, the other interesting thing about Green Sheer in this format is there's really no relevant cards that are strong against green. I looked into it, and there's a second bloom Kiara that is effective against green, but not a lot of decks actually play that. They usually do the Polka-centric build of Kiara, so you're only really seeing the debut Kiara, which does not have that bonus. In the rare circumstance that you run into Kiara that is running the first and second blooms Kiara, it could potentially be a threat, but honestly that matchup is still fine, even with that one weakness. The only other card in the format that is an attacker with weakness against green is second bloom Bay, and no one plays Bay. Bruh. You're not going to see a single Promise deck playing Bay. So there's really little to no threats to Green Sheer. Plus, the Pekora Oshi, which I did mention in the beginning, has 6 life. So you have 6 life, which is super tanky. You have this 220 second bloom, which is super tanky. So this deck is just really hard to deal with. And the only thing holding it back is the fact that it is rather RNG dependent, which when we get to some of the other cards, we'll talk about that more. But you have a way to kind of manipulate your RNG, and I think most of the time, the odds are worth the benefit. So let's go into the next card. The next card we're going to be looking at is the other second bloom AZKi. This one has 190 HP. It has 2 different attacks. We have the SorAZ Gravity, which attacks for 60, and if you have Tokino Sora on the board, which if you run SorAZ, which this deck does, counts as Tokino Sora, then you can send the top card of your cheer deck to your holomem. So another great way to accelerate cheer. Like we said, we have Pekora for cheer preservation, so you're just really building up a lot of cheer. And her other attack is Destiny Song, which is base 100 for 3 cheer. But you roll a die. If it's odd, it does plus 50, and then if it's a 1, it does another plus 50. So basically, you're doing anywhere from 100 to 200 damage, depending on how good your rolls are, which is definitely RNG, right? So you're not consistently doing that, but if your luck is really good, you can do 200. I actually happened to play against a Kiara deck my round 1, which did have the second bloom Kiara with weakness into green. Fortunately, they never really had a chance to set it up. I only ever saw the first bloom Kiara. But the first Buzz Polka has 240 HP, and I just got lucky enough where I rolled a 1 and did 200 damage into that Polka, and with my other collab holomem, I was able to knock it out that same turn. So it's extremely powerful if your odds are favorable. Not only that, my second round was against a Suisei Muna deck, and you may have noticed that this card hits for weakness against blue. So Blue Cheer, which is the Suisei Muna deck, gets an extra 50 from both of these attacks. So for 1 cheer, you can do 110 damage with SorAZ Gravity, and then with Destiny Song, you're guaranteed a base 150. So even if you don't roll a 1, all you need to do is roll an odd to get 200. And if you roll nothing good, you still get 150, which is extremely good. So if you have 2 of these, you have 1 in the center and 1 in the collab, you're guaranteed minimum 300 damage that turn. It's so good. So not only is that first second bloom that we look at really strong against white cheer decks, the other second bloom covers you for blue cheer matchups like Suisei, which were also very relevant in this format. So you have a lot of options going into some of the top decks, and I think that's what makes AZKi so strong. I knew a lot of people at my local were going to be playing Mume Promise or some variant of Promise. My game 3 actually was a Kanata Promise, which was very interesting. They also anticipated a lot of people playing Mume Promise, so they played the Kanata Oshi with the Promise deck as a way to kind of counter it, and they made it to the finals with me, but I was able to clutch it out with this deck, and I just think AZKi is so strong, and the only thing really holding it back is that RNG factor, and I think that's why a lot of people don't play her. Also, I think people underestimate her because she comes with the starter deck, so they assume that she's just not able to keep up, but I really think this is a slept-on deck. I personally think I would put it above Kiara and Suisei in this format, especially because Kiara is red cheer, and there's just so many cards that are super effective against red cheer. Mume Promise has a card that hits for red weakness. So does Kanata, so does Suisei, and so does Sora for some reason. So I just feel like that deck is a little volatile in this format. But with that said, let's go on to the next cards. Moving away from our second blooms, let's talk about our first bloom. So this is SorAZ. As I mentioned, we do run this. So far, we're running 4 copies of every card here. And SorAZ is really solid in this deck because, one, it counts as a Sora card, so it helps your second bloom AZKi if you want that secondary effect for accelerating cheer. But also, this card, it does 50 damage for 2 cheer, and its effect is the reason why you like it, is that you roll a die, and if it's odd, you get to attach a cheer from your cheer deck to that holomem. If it's even, you draw a card. So no matter what you roll, you get some kind of positive benefit from it. And, most of the time I prefer to get the cheer acceleration, but especially late game, if you already have a lot of cheer preserved from your Pekora Oshi, then getting that extra draw power is definitely helpful. And 130 HP is not bad for a first bloom. It's not super tanky, but it's tanky enough that it's still pretty threatening. It's not easy to just immediately take off the board. Now, if you want to talk about tanky, let's go into the other first bloom here. We got 4 of this AZKi, which has 160 HP. That's fairly tanky for a first bloom. Also takes 2 cheer, 450 damage, like SorAZ. So you don't get any additional effects off of this one, but this card's really great to have. 1, just to have more first blooms that let you hit for 50. And 2, it's a little tankier than SorAZ, so if you have cards on the backstage and you just want to get their HP up, especially against decks like Suisei that are going to hit the back of the stage for more damage, you want that 160 holomem because it's going to be a lot harder to take down. So that's kind of the main reason why that is in there, to complement SorAZ. And now for the last first bloom of this deck, and I would say the best first bloom in this build, this AZKi has the bloom effect that on bloom, you can reattach 1 to 3 cheers from your stage to your holomem however you like. This has saved me in so many games, right? You're accelerating cheer attach, you're preserving cheer with Pekora, and one of your holomem get knocked out, or you just have a lot of cheer in one place and you don't have a way to set up a second attack for your collab. You just play the first bloom AZKi and you just fix it. You just fix your cheer distribution. It's so powerful. This comes in clutch in so many scenarios. It is a card that you want to be really careful about when you choose to bloom it. I always hate when I have to bloom it and I'm not able to take advantage of the reattachment. Sometimes you just need that extra HP on the board if you have a weak debut. We do run a couple debuts in here that have pretty low HP. So I have done it without using the bloom effect, but I really try to keep this in my hand for when I need it, unless I have a ton in my hand already. So definitely want 4 of those, and I would say is the strongest first bloom that you're going to see in the whole deck. And of course, the ever so valuable debut holomem. So we run 10 of this debut AZKi. So she has HP 100. This is going to be our tankiest debut in the deck. She just attacks for 20 for 1 cheer. So there's nothing particularly fancy about this card, but 100 HP, not bad at all for a debut holomem. And you just want a bunch of her because she has the extra rule that lets you put as many in your deck as you want. And since this is a mono AZKi deck, we just need to get a bunch of AZKi on the board so that we can start blooming. Other than that, not too much else to say about that card, but I think 10 is a pretty healthy amount. And I'll talk about the other debuts that you run to complement it. The other debut AZKi we're going to run is the one with the collab effect. So this only has 60 HP, which is pretty squishy, but it's really great to draw early game. In an ideal scenario, you want to start your game with this debut AZKi in the center and this one on your backstage so that you can collab with her turn 1. And you obviously, in order for effect, you hope to have another debut on the board. So like a perfect hand would be like at least 2 of this debut and 1 of this debut so that you can collab with her, get your 1 holo power, and then her collab effect is you roll a die, and if it is 4 or less, you get to attach 1 cheer from the top of your cheer deck to your backstage holomem. If it is a 1, you get to move this card from the collab position to the backstage position. If it's a 5 or 6, you're out of luck. But that is super powerful. I was able to roll a 1 in one of my games, which felt really good. But the benefit of having it move to the backstage is that you can only collab once per turn, so that collab position is going to stay open even though she moves. You can't collab again. But like we said, she's 60 HP, which is not very great to have out, and when she's in the collab position, she's at risk of getting downed quite easily. So being able to move her to the backstage while also getting that extra cheer attachment per turn is super strong. Obviously, the odds of getting a 1 each time are extremely low, but even without the 1, as long as you're getting that extra cheer that turn, it's still a really great way to start the game. With AZKi, I definitely prioritize building up my stage rather than just going for attacks. This is not a full aggro deck. You might start a little slow. Like, I had a game where I lost 2 life in like my first turn, and I still end up winning the game. Because of that extra life that we get from Pekora being at 6 life, you have some time to really set up, and I wouldn't worry about just going for knockouts right away. I would really just get your cheer on the board, get your bloomed AZKi out, and do everything you can to set yourself up for success in the late game. So with that AZKi covered, let's go into our last debut. I only run 2 copies of this debut AZKi. She is very situational. I see some decks run 3 of her, I see some run 1. I think 2 is a healthy number. Early game, she's not very helpful because her gift effect is only applicable if you have 3 life or less. So late game, she'd be quite good, but her HP is 50, which is super squishy. She's super vulnerable, so I don't love having her sit on the backstage position, especially in certain decks like Suisei that hit on the back, but she could get easily So You're My Enemy to the front and then immediately knocked out. So I typically sit on this card unless I have no other debuts and I really need one out. I'll put her down and then I'll just next turn first bloom her so that I get the HP safety net. But every now and then you do use this. In this particular tournament, I did not end up using the gift effect. I actually didn't use it a single time. In other games prior to this, I have used it. It can be really helpful late game where maybe you have this on the backstage, someone comes in and knocks down your second bloom AZKi that's got 4 cheer attached to it. You use Pekora, move that 4 cheer to your backstage debut. Then next turn, use your gift ability to immediately set up another second bloom AZKi with 4 cheer on it. So it has its uses. I think it's still worth keeping in the deck despite how squishy it is. But I think 2 is a perfectly healthy number for it. It also only does 20 damage for 1 cheer, but really, you don't want to attack with this card. You just want to keep her safe until you're ready to second bloom her. So that's all the holomem that we run in this deck. So with those covered, let's talk about our support cards. For our support cards, let's start talking about First Gravity. This card is extremely good. We see a lot of similar cards coming out in set 2 for other decks. For this one specifically for Sora and AZKi, it is a limited card, so you can only play one of this type of card once per turn. But unless you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and if you find any Tokino Sora or AZKi cards in there, you reveal them and add them to hand. You can also only play this card if you have 6 or less cards in hand. Fortunately, I never had a situation where I had too many cards that I couldn't play this. I had a couple times where people would ask me, cards in hand? And I always was like right at 6. So fortunately never made that misplay, but something you have to be careful about when playing First Gravity. But yeah, almost every time I play First Gravity, I find 3 or 4 cards off of it. You play so many AZKi holomem in here that you're very likely to find them off of First Gravity. I think maybe one time in that tournament I found only 2 cards, but it's very consistent. It's such a good search engine, and you definitely want to run 4 of these in any AZKi build. In addition to the 4 First Gravity that we run, we of course also run 4 Nodoka. Pretty self-explanatory. Draw 3 cards. You just want to draw as many cards as you can. You want to see more cards, so we play this in there. Not much else to say other than it's a really good card. We run one other staff card in this build, which is I have 1 Manager Chan in this deck. You could play 2 maybe. Someone else at this tournament actually was playing a very similar deck to mine. Unfortunately, they didn't perform as well, but they had, I think, 3 Manager Chan in their deck. I suggested cutting it down a bit because they're also only running 2 idle microphone, but it's up to your preference. I have considered maybe running a second one in here just because there's occasions where you don't have the best draw power or you're not finding the exact card you need, and this is a good way to just reset your hand and hope for the best. But I felt pretty lucky with just the 1 copy. I was able to find it most games when I really needed it most. You don't have a way to search it out, so that's why maybe running 2 is good if you find yourself bricking pretty often, but I think 1 is good, but you could adjust that count based on your playstyle. For items, similar to First Gravity, we have Idle Microphone. This lets you do basically the exact same thing, but instead of looking for Sora cards or AZKi cards, you look for anything that has hashtag singing, which both AZKi and Sora holomems all have. So yeah, this one's, again, pretty straightforward. you just want to have as many of these search cards as possible. I think 4 Idle Microphone and 4 First Gravity is the way to go. It might feel clunky having that many, but you just want to find as many AZKi cards as possible, right? You really want them in hand. You don't want to be empty-handed on first bloom or second bloom AZKis or even debut AZKis, depending on what state of the game you're in. So I think the 4 First Gravity and 4 Idle Microphones are the way to go. That's my personal recommendation. Worked out well for me, so that's what I would go with. And then the very last card in the deck, just to have the option, I run 1, so that makes you my enemy. I honestly don't use it a whole lot. I think it's good to have as a safety net. This is one of those cards where you draw it and sometimes it's absolutely useless, and other times it's the exact card you need to win the game, which is why I feel weird not running at least 1 copy. Again, similar to Mane-chan, you don't have a way to search it or anything like that, so you just kind of have to hard the cards it if you really need it. So I still like it. I would run just the 1. You could maybe run 2 if you find yourself using it more often, but this is what I played. This is my full deck list from that event, and it felt really good to me. Going into set 2, I might have to make some considerations. The timing is really weird because the restrictions go into effect on the 17th, and that's also when the expansion drops, but our Halloween tournament is on the 18th, so I don't know how quickly I'm going to be able to get product or how quickly anyone else is going to be able to get product. I don't know what decks people are going to be building fast enough for the 18th, so it might be a similar meta as this tournament, but also with the restriction list, Mume Promise and Kanata are still going to be fairly relevant. Mume Promise is not going to be as heavily nerfed, so some people may still play her just out of comfort because they know the deck and they've been playing it for a while. So I'm not really sure what to expect going into the second expansion, but I do want to make a video soon covering my predictions and how I think the tier list is going to be affected by our unique EN restrictions. If you haven't seen that video either, I'll link to it as well, talking about our ban and restriction list for EN territories. But other than that, this is my mono AZKi Pekora Oshi deck. I went 3-0 against Pol Kiara, Suisei Muna, and Kanata Promise. I was not expecting to run into Kanata Promise, but hey, it all worked out. I was at least preparing for them separately, not together, so it ended up being fine. Something else fun about winning this tournament was that I got 3 prize packs. Granted, I didn't get anything super crazy. This is from Volume 2, so it's mostly First Blooms, but I'll show you my pulls just for fun. I got the First Bloom Polka, First Bloom Zeta, and First Bloom Pekora. I obviously was hoping to get Promise, but what can you do? Either way, happy with these, and I also got a free poster. This one was for the upcoming expansion after Quintet Spectrum, Elite Spark. I'll show a picture of me holding it proudly. But yeah, it was really fun, and the community there was great. We all get together casually to play before the official sanctioned tournament started, so I knew a lot of people that were going to be participating. And if you're interested in finding a tournament near you, check out my video on how to enter hololive tournaments. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Really great community out there, and I hope you find people that you can play the game with and learn from. But yeah, this deck feels really strong. I think it's a bit of an underdog. Not a lot of people are playing it, and I think it has really good matchup spreads in this set. Of course, we only have so much time left with Blooming Radiance, so I did want to just talk about it while this meta is ending before we go into the next one. And I'm going to be exploring how relevant AZKi may stay going into the next set, because if we still see a lot of Mume Promise and she ends up staying fairly strong, AZKi may still be a solution. Granted, we're getting a lot of really strong decks next expansion with Reine and Marin and a few others, so it's hard to say for sure, but I'll cover that more in another video. But if you like this one, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing and ringing that bell so you don't miss any of my future videos, and let me know in the comments what you think of this build. What decks have you been playing in Blooming Radiance, and what do you think is going to be strong going into Quintet Spectrum? I love to hear your thoughts, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!
Hi, Cameron.